the question would be is, could you take word for word, scene for scene, note for note, the exact same screenplay, the exact same thing they did, and reproduce it?
No, because it's
copyright. But
copyright.
at the bottom put Fast and Furious, Neil's version.
We are rolling.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Creative Businessmen. No guest on the show today. Daniel and I are just continuing a conversation from the last episode with just us, when we talk about some of the ways we could restructure society and maybe reevaluate the currency in our society and hopefully make things better. We discussed things like a top-up approach and some of the problems with the top-down approach in society and issues with corruption in our system and also the importance of always questioning everything and questioning your ideas and having conversations with people that maybe have a different perspective and question your ideas and how these difficult conversations can be painful, but those are the conversations we all need to be having. But anyway, and much more stuff. So it was a fun conversation. I think you guys will enjoy it. I know we got a lot out of it. I hope you do too. And also, if you enjoy the show, be sure to like and subscribe. We really appreciate your support, and hope you guys enjoy the episode. Thanks. Well, the last thing we were talking about was currency, and if we changed the currency in the system or reevaluated the currency where we had an abundance of currency, and then we had an incentive program in society where
So I definitely want to go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know how interesting it will be for everybody else, but
It's all right.
yeah.
Well, I think it's an important topic, and now I want to add some stuff to it too, which we can today. But
Yeah.
it seems like the current structure of society is, and I'm not sure that it's. I don't think it's intentional. I don't think the way it operates is intentional or intentionally created by one person or by a small group of people. I think maybe it's just the way power works. I think it's like the saying that power corrupts, and I think that once you have certain bureaucracies or corporations that become very powerful, they're kind of designed to absorb resources and grow, and they're not. There's no intention behind those things other than a bottom line, and growth, and they'll grow at all costs. So you have to keep a leash on these things and regulate them, and we have to, as a people, have to control these things. And I guess my biggest fear is that these things get out of control, and then there's nothing we can do to reverse it.
Yeah.
So I think like right now, we have a sort of hybrid democratic capitalist society. We have some social programs in place within that society, but it's not. I don't think most people's way of life in our society today is really great. And I think it could be. I think it could be right now. I think we have the technological ability and the resources to make life much better, to make our whole society much better and healthier and more productive. And we can all do better. But you can't do that if the society is being controlled by power. And I used to believe when I was younger, I had more of a conservative perception of how society should work, this top-down approach, and now I see the flaws in that model, and I don't think that society is. I don't think the current structure is really bad. I think that there's some benefits to it, but I think that you have to have some balance in the society where everything can't always go to the top. There has to be, balance within the system, and there has to be a high floor in the society. So that's why, going back to the last conversation, I think we have to reevaluate our currency. Right now, our currency is not really based on anything in particular. There's no real set standard. It's generated by the central bank, and based on what the government
I was going to
needs.
talk to you about this. Our currency really is not currency; it's IOUs.
Well, yeah, all
If
currencies are trust.
Yeah, if you look
Yeah.
at the notes in your pocket, I mean, it's a note.
Yeah,
It's a
a
loan.
note of trust.
It's a note of trust, right? So
Yeah.
money is not. We literally create money out of thin air by lending it.
Yeah, it's our imagination.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
lent. So, like if $10 million is 10 billion, 10 whatever, $10 trillion is put into circulation,
We're lending it to ourselves.
you're lending it to yourself, but then you're also charging interest on top of that. But see, the interest doesn't exist in society. There is no. So you literally have to take out new loans to pay the interest.
Yeah.
Because the money doesn't physically exist, it's not created. Right? Like literally money is created through debt, through a loan, right? Through this IOU system. So I think that this is the part that was throwing me off too. I was trying to think about this, like how is money created really? And if you think about it, it's all tied to debt.
Oh yeah, it's all
So-
leverage, right?
And then you charge interest on, so you make imaginary money, and then you lend it out. You give it to people. You lend it out, but somebody's got to pay it, right? Because
Yep.
it shows up as debt on somebody's book. Call it the national deficit, whatever you want to call it.
right.
And then we are charged interest on that debt. But the interest doesn't exist in society. Like there is no money. Doesn't just magically create more money.
Right.
So where does the interest to pay back? So you've got this machine that ever since they created the system, I think in the early 20s, has just constantly grown and grown and grown and grown and grown because it has to. It's by design.
I think it changed again in the 70s, around 1970.
I think that's when they pulled it off the gold standard,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
'Cause that was destined to fail.
yeah. Well, so, but if you think about this, though,
Sort of.
that
Yeah.
means if you paid the national debt to zero, you would collapse the entire economy.
Mhm.
So why are we talking about in politics how high the national debt is? It's designed. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but having a high national debt, is that not a sign of a successful society? Based on the current system, the way the system, I'm just asking.
It's a sign of growth, right? It's a sign of a large society.
It's got to. Well, you can't have money in a society without the loan to generate the money.
Well, my
initial
fear is that
right?
one of my fears is that the way it's set up now is you have a lot of inflation as they because they're constantly creating. They say printing, but it's 95% of our currency is digital, so they're creating more currency constantly, and that makes the currency less valuable. So really, until you reach a level in society where you own a lot of assets like real estate and stocks and stuff like that, that you're not you're constantly losing money, right?
Well, yes, but I'm a lot of this is devil's advocate. I'm questioning because I'm curious here. But you had said previously that you wish that every human at birth had a value, right? Had a worth, and increased our worth by that, right?
Well, not just at birth, but just ongoing.
But yeah, I'm saying,
Yeah.
but the moment they're born, they have a worth.
So you take,
and then they have an ongoing worth as long as they're alive.
Yeah, so we have to agree as a society what the floor should be for an average citizen.
But then everybody that's born is an inflationary act.
Well, not necessarily.
Well, it's more money in the supply chain.
Well, it doesn't create more money. It increases the value of the currency.
Yeah, but how do you spend it? It's got to create more money.
Well,
we can't have 10 things and a new person's born and then you share those 10 because then you're devaluing everybody else's. The more people that are born, the more you devalue everybody else's holdings. So you've got to create more money.
Well, not necessarily. You look at it like Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is it's a set number of Bitcoins.
Correct.
And Bitcoin today might be worth $40,000, but tomorrow it might be worth $60,000.
That's because there's no more added.
Right. Yeah, because it's a finite thing. But you can break Bitcoin up into small pieces. Since it's digital, you can have as many. There's an infinite number of numbers between numbers.
Yeah. So, but you're devaluing. If you take some share of somebody else's every time somebody's born, you're devaluing the current supply.
Well, I don't think you have to do that. And
this is where I got confused because you and I talked the other day, and I thought about this, and I went through this like thought loop, especially last night. And I was like, wait a second, if we don't want to create new money, then we have to pick a number, and let's say that's $100 trillion.
Right.
But every time somebody's born, that $100 trillion is divided further.
Well, so think of a dollar as a Bitcoin. So $1 is a dollar, but you could divide that dollar up infinitely, and that dollar can increase in value. So you can't call it a dollar.
Yeah,
it's worth But you call it something. It could be some type of. It could be a blockchain technology. It could be a Bitcoin,
Right.
or whatever coin, U.S. coin or whatever. And you have this cryptocurrency, or blockchain currency. And then as people are born in society, this currency has something to base its value on. It'll also be based on everything we base money on now, GDP and businesses and the stock market and the banks and all these things, but also individuals in the society. So every time someone's born in society, this currency becomes more valuable. And we can see it digitally increase in value. So one unit of this currency.
Well, it shouldn't go up. It should be a net zero. So if it would increase in value, but only by the measure that the new person's added.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So technically, because if the adverse is true.
So if our population reduces, the currency will reduce also. But another element of the equation would be the value of the piece of the planet that we inhabit. So which should, as long as we keep advancing as a society, continue to increase in value, and that's an enormous value. Mm-hmm. So plus we can leverage this too. So if a company borrows from the banks, then we're still you don't have to.
This is the part. I almost feel like the system we're even talking about is inevitable to be back to something similar to what we already have, because the problem is money is fictitious. Like, we're not dealing in hard assets. Like,
it's all imagination.
It's all imagination.
Yeah.
We're not trading out cows for goats and goats for tractors.
But I think you have to. I think you have to have your set currency, and it doesn't have to be one currency. It could be multiple currencies.
Right.
But these currencies have to be finite numbers.
Yeah.
And they can increase in value exponentially. As we progress as a society, these currencies increase in value, but the number of them doesn't increase. You can just break them up into smaller pieces, and people can, because you won't need much of them to pay for things. So that's so my thought.
Where I'm confused, you know how they have the coins, like the old gold coins, and what would happen is I'd get like a shilling or whatever you would call it, right?
And you clip little pieces off of it.
You clip little pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had to install the ridges on the side to know if people actually did that. That's why we have ridges on our coins.
Yes.
So imagine what you're talking about is we've got this coin, and every time somebody's born, we take a piece of it because we can break that up into an infinite number of pieces. But the original coin gets smaller by doing that.
But it doesn't, because it's not a physical coin. It's a digital currency, so the coin is always the coin. It just becomes more valuable. So it's the opposite. It's
I could argue that's right.
It's like adding pieces to the coin. So every time someone's born, you're adding a piece to the coin, and it's growing.
That people would take off the coins, right?
Uh-huh.
They didn't disappear. They just weren't physically attached to that coin.
Yes, but the coin disappeared. So
eventually, as it dispersed to everybody.
Yes, but
if you looked at the collection total of all those pieces, it still equaled the coin.
Yeah, but in this, the coin doesn't disappear; it actually grows. The coin.
That's the part I'm throwing.
The coin becomes more valuable. So that coin never changes in value. Really, it actually, I guess, technically decreases in value because it gets spread out. But this coin, it's just like a Bitcoin.
Right.
If you have a Bitcoin, it's worth today $42,000 or something.
Yeah, it dropped big time. Yeah.
So you have this $42,000 coin. This giant coin, and you can many millions of people can own, or hundreds of people can own a piece of that coin.
Yeah,
or a portion of that blockchain.
Let me ask you this question again, devil's advocate, just playing dumb on this side, but so there's a finite number of Bitcoin, right? It's a limited supply,
mm-hmm.
and it lost trillions of dollars in valuation, or at least hundreds of billions of dollars in valuations in the last 2 days.
Yeah,
where did it go?
Well, so the thing with cryptocurrencies is they're not really.
Well, no. Just think about that where did the value go? We have the exact same number.
Yeah,
the value is based on our giving it value.
Right. But it's not based on.
So is our money supply.
So maybe it's not based on the right things.
This is where I'm getting. So if money, because literally hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, just disappeared in days. It's gone.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
People lost that money.
Yeah.
It's gone. How did it go away? We still have the exact same number of things.
So you have to have, I think your currency has to be based on substantial things, like things that you can see and you're aware of, and that you can, what's the word? What am I?
It's not like tangible. I don't know.
Not even, well, it's sort of tangible, but not even tangible, but something that's,
what happened to Bitcoin could happen to the U.S. dollar. The thing is that we have faith in the dollar, right? It's tied to so many things, right?
Yes.
This is the part where it's throwing me off. If we have something that's not tied to anything, if people lose confidence or faith in that thing, its perceived value goes to nothing.
So here's where I think the only way we can do this successfully is if you have a bottom-up approach to society, but you do it in a way where...
Isn't that what stock is?
Not really. It's a top-down.
Well, I mean, like, if you think about... So we've taken a bottom-up approach. We talked about this with some of our companies. A lot of we have techs that make what doctors and lawyers makes because we have that bottom-up approach where we want everybody to win, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, like, if people just adopted without us forcing them to do it, if they just adopted the habit of every dollar they earn that they invest in some other company from day one, if you were born thinking that way, wouldn't you be investing in the success and failure of the top?
Well, not necessarily, because I think... Okay, so that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, so you remember, what was it called back in the day? Everybody, they'd go work somewhere for 40 or 50 years. All their money would be held in the company's stock, basically, and they'd get a pension or something. You remember that? And then all these pensions went bankrupt.
It was just retirement.
People lost all their money.
Yeah.
The problem with the bottom investing with the top is that they love it when they're winning, but when they lose, the top becomes the criminal, right? Like, people don't understand that you can't sit money in a company for 80 years and expect it to be there. And when the money goes away, when the company gets devalued or the industry changes or technology changes and that business goes away, the owners lose money, which includes
the company becomes valueless.
Valueless, right? Which includes the people that invested that are at the bottom.
Yeah, for sure. So I
don't think people at the bottom want to be tied to the top. I think people at the bottom.
I think the whole system needs to be balanced, and I think and
that's pretty balanced. Well, they just don't like the outcome.
Well, so how to articulate this? Okay, so like with my idea with currency is you reevaluate the currency. You have maybe have a finite amount of currency. And maybe different currencies for different things. So
I like that idea, like the medical stuff.
So you have like medical currency and transportation and food and stuff like that. So you have all these different blockchain currencies for different things. And then if you're a participating member of society, you're in the tax code. And then you get subsidized by society up to 20 hours of your contribution to the society. So as long as you're working at least 20 hours a week, you're going to get the equivalent of maybe $100 an hour for that contribution. And that could be a cashier or a lawyer or a doctor. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Everybody's going to get that up to 20 hours. And the idea behind that is if you're doing something that has purpose, like we enjoy what we do, we have purpose in life. So we don't mind working 80 hours a week or 100 hours a week or whatever. 100%. But if you're a cashier, that job doesn't provide purpose. I mean, it has a purpose. It's a very important job. It's just as important as the doctor, the lawyer, or anything else.
Right.
You've got to have the cashier or the janitor, whatever. These entry-level jobs are important, but they're not giving those individuals doing those jobs purpose. And I think in a healthy society, you want to encourage participation, but you also want to encourage people to find out what they're good for. Like most people, I think, don't find out what they're ambitious about or what their passions are about or what they're good at because they're so strapped down just trying to survive in society. And so I think doing this, creating this incentive, it incentivizes people to take on these entry-level jobs, to do something, participate in the system, in society, contribute to society. And then this cashier who's working, and then the entry-level jobs, you only have to work 20 hours a week. Because you don't need the same person working, 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing these monotonous, mindless jobs because that's not helping our society. That's actually just creating unhappy people in society, and it's also hurting that business because they're getting poor labor. So now this person that they can work 20 hours a week as a cashier or a janitor, they're making the equivalent of $2,000 a week. They have a decent place to live. They have good transportation. They have all their medical needs. They have education if they want it. They have all the food they need. They have a good life. The floor is at a good place. It's a comfortable place to live. But then this person says, okay, maybe they go to an art show or something and they see a painting and they're like, oh, that's I like this. It's inspiring. So then they go back and buy some paints and stuff and they start painting. And then they spend 80 hours a week painting in addition to their 20 hours a week at their monotonous job, entry-level job, and they become a really good artist. And then they move on from that job to become a professional artist. Or maybe they want to learn a new trade. So they spend the rest of their time learning a new trade, and then they move on from the entry-level job into this trade that they really enjoy.
Yeah.
Or they go get an education. Education should be available to everyone in society. If you want to have a healthy society, you need an intelligent, educated society. So education is available, and so with this,
isn't that what social media though? If you think about like YouTube and the Chinese are using TikTok for education, we're using it for other things apparently. But isn't that what we're doing? I mean, if you think about like the professors, like Jordan Peterson's an example of one that streams his podcast. The other one you told me about are his
Andrew Huberman.
Andrew Huberman.
Yeah,
he's a Stanford professor, and he wants to bring Ivy League education to the masses for free.
Yeah, but it needs to be a formal education, though. I think in our society and in any society, you need something showing that you've actually put in the work.
Right.
And I mean, you understand that. I mean,
no, I do. I think I like where you're going with it.
You don't have to have a formal education to learn, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I like where you're going with it. I'm trying to figure out how we pay for it. Like, I'm trying to figure out, because let's take things that we can't control. Like,
well, before you go into that real fast,
go ahead.
So how you pay for it, though, is you base a percentage of the value of the currency on the people, on these things already there. It's already added into the equation.
I agree, but if new people are born, that adds to the equation. If
It
a million people die overnight, that detracts from the equation.
Yeah, because you don't need it. Because you don't need that. You don't need that part of the equation.
Are they allowed to pass their wealth onto their children?
Sure. Well,
so then it doesn't disappear.
Well, I don't know that you need to.
Well, this is my point, though. If the wealth doesn't disappear when they die...
Well, no, you can, because look at it like a Bitcoin. So if a Bitcoin, it's a pie, right? So this coin is a pie.
Yep.
And within this pie, you have a big section of it that's just businesses and banks and GDP and the economy we have today.
Yeah.
And then you have another section of the pie that's just all based on the evaluation of people, like the population of society. And we're all valued on the base level the same. Now you can go from the floor to infinity.
Right.
But on the base level, we agree that that's a certain value based on the cost of things in society. So that's a piece of the pie.
Right.
And that can fluctuate, and the value of that coin will fluctuate based on that piece of that pie. But it doesn't matter. It's that piece of the pie meets the needs of all the people. And if there's less people, there's less need there. If there's more people, there's more need there.
So you're kind of talking like almost like a Social Security check that a person in retirement gets of $2,500 a month. They get that whether or not they generate new income or not. So what you're basically trying to figure out is some type of Social Security program that every individual that's got a pulse, basically.
Except Social Security is based on what people are putting into the system, and it's.
Or well, yeah. But what I'm saying is, you want something similar to that where. Because Warren Buffett doesn't cash his checks. He doesn't get his money, right? Because he leaves it.
Yeah, no reason.
There's no reason, right?
Yeah.
But the point is that technically he qualifies for it.
Yeah, but see, the problem with Social Security is it's not balanced, and it's just based on what people put into that system.
I know that you're wanting to fix the system.
Yes.
And then give it to everybody.
Right.
Then who? What? And that. So
the value of that need is built into the system.
Then if we do that, that doesn't stop inflation.
Well, I'm not there yet, but
that's
I agree.
So I'm trying to figure out.
But then there's another portion of that coin also, that where our portion of the planet is another giant wedge.
Yeah.
In that equation, maybe the biggest wedge in that equation. Maybe the biggest portion of the pie as far as the evaluation of the currency. But you're right. How do you stop inflation? You asked a question last time, like, okay, if we implemented this system of currency, what prevents companies from just raising prices and price gouging people to back to the same place we are today? It's like the argument about raising minimum wages.
Yeah.
Is if we raise,
which by the way we said a year ago, everybody's wages are going to go up, all the prices are going to go up. The wages went up, the prices have all went up, by the way. Point that out.
It's inevitable.
And every one of our businesses, and all of our prices have went through the roof.
Yeah, because if the cost of materials go up or goods go up, then businesses' margins.
Yeah, which means there's no raise, by the way. People just hadn't figured out. It just costs more to live.
And as a the smaller the business, the more margin they need to stay in business. And because a small business can't work on tiny margins, they go out of business. They just can't. Only large corporations can work on small margins, and that's part of the problem we have today. Is that before I get into that, or maybe let's get into that first. Let's go down this path. So that's one of my concerns about the way society is structured today, or at least our society. As a capitalist hybrid society, it seems like as the biggest, most powerful companies grow, they become enormous. And they start to gobble up all the resources in the society. Not just corporations, but also bureaucracies. And typically the bureaucracies start working for the corporations because the corporations are kind of driving the bureaucracies. So now you have a society where we have these major companies, these major corporations that are very powerful, and they have heavy influence over our politicians, our government. And you have a society that's divided into small groups of people. So our government and our media are both controlled now by mega corporations. And when I look at the government, I see Republicans and Democrats. And for the most part, most of these officials that work in our government they're intrinsically part of the system. Like they're professional politicians. There's very few, I would say very few of our politicians who are actually independent thinkers, and they push against the grain, and they really care about helping society. I think most of our politicians, mostly what they care about is the interest of the special interest of the corporations that influence them the most. And when you look at the top level corporations and banks, they contribute to all of the politicians equally, Republican and Democrat, because they're all on their side. They're influencing the whole system. So it's like when you on the population level, on the ground level, you have Republicans and Democrats mostly, because it goes back to my thing where you can divide society into people that are more conservative or more liberal, and it's just we're just predisposed to think that way. And then you've got a smaller portion of society that are like me, they're kind of in the middle, and I can kind of go either way. I'm or like you really. I mean, you're an independent thinker. You're not like a team guy. You think for yourself, and you can see the big picture. But I think a lot of people, they buy into the narrative of I'm more conservative, so I kind of like these ideas, so I'm going to follow this team.
Right.
And then with our political system, we have two parties, which is, I think, a terrible idea. I think we should have no parties. But we have two parties, and that creates teams. So the Republicans can put out certain ideas that are going to attract more conservative people, and then the Democrats can put out certain ideas that will attract more liberal people, and then they create these teams. And then they can put out narratives that maybe have nothing to do with their stance on things, and their team will follow that narrative because they're just on that team. It becomes like a mindless thing. And on the top level, at the top tier level, where everything is really controlled, they act like they're on opposing teams, but they're all receiving incentives from the same people. Yep. And when you see like a bill that's, say they're going to try to pass a bill, and it's an infrastructure bill or something, well, it's going to have all these different things in it. Like all these politicians from both sides are going to put things in this bill.
They hide it in there many times.
They pretend like they hide it in there.
Yeah. They hide it from us.
Yeah, from us, yeah. And nobody has time to read all that shit anyway. Yeah. But most of them don't either. But they just put gobs of different things in there that conflict with each other.
Yep.
And the bill's never intended to pass in the first place.
Yep.
It's just designed to make it appear like they're doing what we want them to do. Like that team's fighting for me, and this team's fighting for them, and they can't agree, so we just can't pass the bill because we can't agree on it. They never intended to pass the bill or agree on the bill because it wasn't what they really wanted to do.
Right.
And so you have hundreds of lobbyists that work for these corporations and talk to these politicians and tell them, our company we really would like to see this happen. And by the way, after people retire and stuff, we'll probably have some positions available on our board, and it pays pretty well. It's a strong 6-figure job, maybe 7 figures, or we've got speaking engagements. Just not has nothing to do with what we're talking about now, but we have speaking engagements. After you've served and you've put your time in, we'd love to have you come and speak for us, and they pay pretty well, and so it's like our politicians are controlled by the power structure of society. And now, years ago you would see in the past you could see power more clearly. Like you could see somebody like Hitler, who becomes a dictator and he controls the system. But now, power is more elusive. It's more like if you're a Republican in society today, you might not trust the government, but you only trust the other half of the government, the Democratic side or the Democrat side of the government, and then that makes you distrust that portion of the government and all the people that support that side of the government. So it divides you against your fellow citizens because you think they're what's causing the problem in society. We all know there's a problem in society, but then you're a Democrat in society, and you distrust the government, but only the other part of the government, the Republican side of the government, and all of its supporters. So then you're divided against your fellow citizens because you think they're supporting this corrupt side of the government. But then from my perspective, the whole thing's corrupt. Like it's not the Republican side or the Democrat side, it's both sides. The whole thing is corrupt, and we think the corruption is the government, but the corruption is actually what's controlling the government. And I don't even know that it's really corruption. It's just kind of how it works. I mean, it is corruption, but it's just the way it's structured right now. It's almost inevitable that these top tier corporations are just going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing until they probably just destroy society and they just collapse. Yeah. And I think that's the way it's structured today. That's almost inevitable. But I'm hopeful that since we do have the ability to share ideas and still speak, and we still have the First Amendment, that we have hope to overcome this obstacle. But it's very complex and it's overwhelming. I don't know how you change power like that once it reaches that level.
It seems like it's based a lot on just how we humans are. We team up naturally. We are predisposed to being a certain way, and we got to we're a little different, but like, it's hard to not have any sides. I agree with that. It'd be wonderful just to have the great people who can do good jobs, and you can pick them for whatever system of government you have. But it's hard to keep it from, at least with humans, it seems like, from turning to where people get eventually, like probably the first year that you make this new great government, it'll be great. It'll work out pretty well. But then my mistrust of humans, I think, leads to this. But
that's the problem. We in a truly free society, we're all the government. Your government is just people that kind of keeps things running.
Do you think adding more people into the government, so like not necessarily more power, but taking and dividing the power amongst more? So whereas you have, let's say, and this is not the way it works, but let's just say that there was one vote per state. Each state went one vote, and each county got one vote. And maybe it needs to be 10 votes per county and 100 votes per state. Maybe you need to divide it to give more people. So that way the corruption is always going to be there, but it's less effective.
I think
there's more people to corrupt.
I think it needs to be set up how. So it goes back to my idea of
how about no people? How about just a vote? How about it's just every individual citizen? I mean,
that's the way.
Tied to our DNA, our retina, something. Like every single one of us gets to vote on each individual issue, and we don't have to pick a party.
So the issue with that, though, right, ends up being in big cities versus small towns. More people live in big cities. There are things that benefit a lot of people versus small people, right? So then you have to figure out how to make each vote equal. Really,
I think that is. I really think that is rhetoric designed to make us accept the representative democracy.
Agreed.
And
but there is some.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I also think
if there are 10 people who live in this county that you live in, and then there are 1,000 people who live in a different place.
So maybe
Well,
each county, things affects each county needs to be on a county basis and city. I mean, maybe there's limited. I don't know.
I think it comes down to representatives.
Well,
right?
and
Well,
not to pick on California, but California is obviously a different place than, say, Texas.
Think about it this way. Think about how insane our current structure is
Oh, it's
from a government level. Like, if I'm going to be a senator, I'm supposed to represent the ideas and opinions of millions of people. But I'm just a person. I'm just a person, just like those people.
Yeah.
That's insane. And my thing. So
And
my
they
thinking
don't
is
consult those people throughout the year, by the way.
they don't give a shit what those people think.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like how often is your local
They
senator?
don't.
How often does your local senator say, "Hey guys, I'm sending out this survey. These are 50 things I'm getting ready to vote on. I'd like to get your feedback."
Those people are gross, man. Keep those
No,
people away from me.
They send those out. It's just they end
They
up on
want-
the desks of people who are on big boards.
Well, they send out 30 things, and usually it's very politically divisive stuff, and it's worded in such a way like I get them from Trump still. I mean, I'm just picking on him because I get stuff from him. There's other politicians I get from too, and it says, "Don't you feel the left-wing media is corrupting and this and this?" And it's all painted to one narrative, which pisses me off because how about we just state fact and let me make my decision?
Yeah, just share ideas.
Just share, like,
No,
hey,
no
this
teams, no teams, no.
Yeah,
no
like, I
politi-
agree. I think the media is corrupt. Not the
But you-
Democratic side of the media, all media.
The whole thing, all of it.
Yeah.
because you can't work together if we're all separated by identity. If
And that goes back to education, right? An educated society is less likely to let that happen. But if they can just tell us,
Yeah.
if they can treat us like we're dumb and we act like we're dumb, then there's
well, right now,
Yeah.
even our educational systems are controlled by power.
We do have some great news coming.
But that's why they're so expensive.
There's great news coming, guys. The millennials in the next 20 years will be the wealthiest generation ever to have lived because and we all know that they're awesome stewards of wealth. I'm not supposed to laugh.
You're a legacy millennial.
I am. But they're about to inherit. There's $70 trillion that's going to be inherited, passed down over the next 20 years to the millennials. That's a little fact that came out yesterday. $70 trillion.
Wow.
Now, about 40% of that will be paid in tax, by the way, over the next 20 years. So the government will be frivolous and waste that. But 70 trillion. So it's supposed to be the largest wealth. We're in the midst of the largest wealth transfer in the history of the United States.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's another thing too. The way the system is currently structured, and the way the power lies in the system. When I see things like economic, like with the pandemic, when they shut down the economy.
Yeah.
When I see that, they shut down the economy. They shut down everything but the largest, most powerful corporations. And why do they do that? And I believe that I'm 100% certain that their lobbyists are pushing for that in
Eliminate competition.
in government. Yeah, and when they shut down the society, they shut down everybody but the most powerful corporations. As these small businesses can't survive that shutdown and they go out of business, these large corporations just take up those resources and they take over that business. That's why there was a 30-some% increase in the most powerful corporations during the
I think it's 40. The average billionaires' net worth grew by 40% since the pandemic started.
It's a clear shift of wealth.
Now, and at the time I read the statistic about the 40%, 140% of the cash in circulation. We had 140% cash in circulation compared to the start of the pandemic. So basically, the money supply at the time had increased by 40%, and the average net worth of the billionaire on the Forbes list increased by 40%.
It's so obvious,
Yeah.
and I don't want to get into the pandemic political nonsense.
Right.
You know, it's so like with like companies like Pfizer. So yes, the vaccine works as far as it's taking us to gene therapy. They did to change this year they changed the definition of a vaccine to make the mRNA.
Pro-vax. You talking about
Webster's Dictionary, they changed the definition of what a vaccine is to include mRNA vaccines, which was a gene therapy, but now it's called a vaccine. And also vaccine got listed as the number one word of the year, which is kind of funny. It's like they want everybody to read this new definition of vaccine. I don't care. The mRNA technology does work as far as preventing severe illness with COVID.
Yeah.
It doesn't prevent you from getting COVID.
Agreed.
But there's a lot of money involved in this. I think I just saw that Pfizer made $36 billion last year off the vaccine. $36 billion in 1 year. It's a lot of money. The entire entertainment industry or the music industry only makes about $12 billion a year. I think it's $12.5 billion a year. So that's just to put that in perspective. That's all the artists, all the musicians. It's $12.5 billion.
So we had 3 times that.
And so there's a lot of money involved, and then we're not allowed to talk about it or ask questions. Anytime someone says you can't question something, that's corrupt. If you want to know what power is, if you want to find power, just start asking questions. And when someone tells you to stop asking questions about that, you know that's a source of power.
Right.
And like I said, the vaccines work, but there's a lot more to it, a lot more nuance to it than just does it work. It's, there's should everybody have to do something? And I say no, and especially if it's not something that's 100% preventing you. Maybe if it was like smallpox and you have a vaccine that 100% prevents smallpox, yeah, we could all vote as a society to say, yeah, we should all take this. But it's not that case, and there's also other treatments that you're not allowed to talk about because those things aren't as valuable. They're not as profitable, and that scares me.
The dose is less than a penny a day.
Yeah, like of ivermectin and stuff like that, and we'll never know. So that's another problem is you have to spend $20 million to do a study on something, a really efficient study on a medication, and if it's a medication that's generic, nobody's going to spend $20 million. But our society should be structured to do studies on whatever we need to do studies on, regardless of profits, because our medical system shouldn't be based in profits. You can't expect an honest, non-corrupt system if it's based on profit. Yep. Like it's just impossible. And what's also messed up about it is that the pharmaceutical companies do a lot of their studies with our tax dollars, so we're paying for it anyway, and then they mark it up 40 times and sell it back to us. But with the vaccine, we're paying for that through our taxes. We're paying for all of it, just indirectly. Yeah. And
which brings me back to my other point that there's no such thing as something for free. Somebody's paying for something.
Right. But if we retooled the system, like I said, I don't think the structure of the system is necessarily a problem. It is to a certain level because you have monopolies. It's like social media is 100% a monopoly, and that's the problem with censorship in social media. Is it should not be. It should be considered a monopoly and should be considered a utility because so much of it is controlled by just one or two or three corporations.
Yep.
And it's just like the phone company. You can't censor people's phone calls because they have a monopoly.
Yeah.
So it's anything that's that big should be considered a utility, and they should just have to follow the guidelines of the law, whatever the Constitution is, because we need people asking questions. We need people, even the worst people, like you. If you have terrible, horrible, awful ideas, you should still be able to express those ideas because that's part of society. You're a piece of society. You're maybe a shitty piece of society, but you're still a piece of society. We need to hear what you have to say, and we need to be able to go against what you say and say why that's wrong, why that's not something you should feel or think, or why that's not beneficial to society. But It's not our government's place or our media's place or some corporation's place to say you can't be in the conversation. That's our collective place to tell that person how we feel about what they're saying, and I think that's very important. Just being a free, autonomous part of society, but going back to the restructuring of or retooling of the system from the bottom up, I think number one, we have to reevaluate the currency. I think we have to restructure the voting system in society because. Right now, it would probably be a problem if everybody voted because a lot of our society is really unhappy. A lot of people don't really understand how society works. I think we have to retool the society to, number one, encourage participation, also encourage people to become more educated, or at least pursue things they're passionate about, which will lead to more education in that area, whatever their interest is.
Right.
And if you heal the society, you raise the floor in society, you eliminate poverty, everybody's participating, everybody's doing okay, everybody's doing at least well, and then some people are excelling and doing very well, then you're going to have a more balanced society. You eliminate parties, eliminate political parties, allow everybody to be in the conversation, actually have conversations with each other. That's, if you want to solve a problem, you have to have people that have different perspectives communicating with each other and going through these painful discussions to figure out, how do we make this happen? If we all want to get to the same place, then how do we get there? And if everybody in your group is agreeing with you, you're not accomplishing anything. You're not learning anything new. There's no nuance. It's all just echoes of the same stuff. You need to have people question your ideas. You should always question your own ideas. That's science. You question everything forever.
Yeah.
It's unlimited complexity, and the idea is that the more you question it, the more you figure it out, the more problems you solve, the better things get. And so I think we reevaluate the currency, we restructure the society in almost like a I'm going to say a democratic anarchy society. And anarchy seems like chaos and lawlessness, and that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to more of a structure where we decentralize society. So we all participate in the society, and it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It is complex, but you maybe you have a societal structure where we all agree. Number one, we can all vote independently. We can all vote, and there's no parties. We vote on ideas, and maybe we eliminate lobbyists, and you start from the bottom. You start from the raw materials level, and you say, and this is when you brought a really good question last podcast about, well, if we change the monetary structure of society and people start doing well, what prevents companies from just raising prices through the roof, and we're back in the same place we are now, where you have people at the bottom that are just poor, and they're barely making it because things are so expensive, and that would happen for sure.
Yeah.
But so we would
It's
have
not just greedy people. We had talked about.
It's just the way people work.
No, not even that. Just governments. So California had put, and again, not to pick on California, many states have done this, but California put in rent controls in places in certain areas. Well, you and I talked about this the other day, right? So they put rent controls in place to limit these mean, nasty, greedy landlords, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
And because the landlords were the problem. So they capped, and in some of these areas, you can only raise the rents like $50 a year. But see, they didn't put a cap on how much the city could raise the taxes, the property taxes, and the state, and the city services and utility and trash. And so they put a cap on the landlord, but the landlord's costs went through the roof. And so now, as contributing to the housing shortage, you have many, many, many homes, but because of this, essentially the rent moratorium that's there, that you cannot rent it for the market rent. Market rent should be $8,000 a month. You rent it for $3,000 a month, so they don't rent them.
To make any sense, I wonder how many of those properties were gobbled up by the government.
Well, see, that's the thing. But like we all think it's just people, landlords, or this or that. But landlords' costs go up.
Right.
If the landlord's costs go up and he's not able to pass that on to a tenant, the landlord goes out of business.
Yeah, or goes under, and then the government takes over the property and then sells it at a cheap price to the bigger corporations that can.
And which is what we're seeing right now.
Can't work on a 2% margin.
Corporations own more, are acquiring more of the last 6 to 8 months, have acquired more single-family homes than the actual market itself.
Yeah, they're throwing a rock in the gears in the middle of the system, and that's why it has to be structured from the bottom up.
Yeah, so when you're talking about structure from the bottom up, what California would have had to do is say on these houses that we're going to put this rent moratorium on them, that we're also going to stop raising taxes on these properties too, and we're going to stop the utilities charge. Think about utilities.
Well, if they're trying to do it to help a certain portion of society, that would make sense.
Yeah, but they didn't do that because
Yeah.
they don't care. They want their money. They just made a political move, which was a half-hearted move, which basically was, hey, look, let's say it was the Republicans. Hey, look, Republicans, these Democrats are the problem, so we're going to bar them from raising your rents, and then we're going to tax them to death, right? But it makes the landlords look like the villain.
Yeah.
When in reality, the government's got a system where they're taking half measures and not looking at cause and effect.
Same as raising the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Same effect. And that's why I say if we reevaluate the currency and put in a system that incentivizes people to participate,
Yeah.
that cashier or that janitor, they still make $10, $12 an hour from
Yeah.
that company, from that machine. That can only pay them that. But then they get their subsidy through society.
Sure.
And
I've got another one that we got to think about, though, too. Think about this. So there's two ways to look at this, though. But let's say that we all love peaches. And for whatever reason, the peach supply, let's say there's 100 million peaches a year, and let's say that 99 million of them died. Like they spoiled. Or they got in a fire, whatever. Something happened.
Yeah.
And now we've only got 1 million peaches left. But everybody loves fucking peaches. What keeps the price going 100 to 1?
Well, I've thought about this.
Well, and even if the government says you can't raise the price,
You don't have to have peaches either.
well, what about shoes? I like those shoes are probably $200 or $300, but I like the ones with a check mark on them, and I think there's a limited supply of those, and I think those shoes should be $100,000 a piece.
Well, you
have to put constraints on
margins.
Yeah.
So that's why it has to go from the bottom up. So we have to collectively as a society control the cost of raw materials.
Yeah.
And you can say, okay, what do we all agree that the margin should be on these raw materials?
All right, this is gonna be controversial.
From the bottom. Oh, it is. Yeah, it's a tough one.
No, this I'm ready to throw you a curveball. I'm gonna use a PG-13 term. Women. Men are willing to pay for the presence, the accompaniment of women. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to regulate how much a woman can charge to be in her company?
Well, sort of.
That's it.
Because
I think she's very, very attractive. This one's a 2 and that one's a 10. And I'm willing to give everything I've saved my entire life to this one that's half my age because I want to spend the next 10 years I have with her.
Well, let me go back to this. So
this
on
is
things,
human
on
will,
things
human
other,
nature. Like
on
that's
things
what I'm saying. How do we account
outside
for that?
on things outside of personal services
Or free will. What I'm talking about is free will. How do you do this without eliminating free will? Because what if I value you so much that I say, and I treat you like, I don't know why, but everything you do, I think it's worth 1,000 times what everybody else does. And then other people start to buy into it. And then now, how do you change free will? Because like
I don't think you have to in that case.
Yeah, but you're saying we're going to control margins.
Well,
but
I'll get to that. But on a basic goods level,
yeah,
so,
your standard. So maybe you can apply this to like the standard, like the food.
There can be outliers for sure, but on like standard basic goods and commodities and stuff like that, you can say, okay, well on things outside of personal human level things that we manufacture in society, you can put a margin on the raw material cost. You can say, okay, raw materials, what should they cost, and what margin should we allow on these raw materials? And you'll have to account for the cost of like the mining and stuff like that. What should those services cost? But so like above your base cost. First of all, what are all the costs of the raw materials? This will dictate everything. So we all agree on what the raw material costs are for all materials.
Yeah.
And then once you become a manufacturer, what are your margins allowed to be above the cost of your raw materials and your manufacturing costs?
Yeah.
And it would be like that through the whole system. So it's very complex, and it already is anyway.
And in my head, I'm thinking of ways to take advantage of it already. I'm like, okay, well,
but
you're going to
to
control the margins to the wholesaler,
and you also want these companies to do well. You want a high enough margin where businesses can do well. And we have enough experts. We could figure this out, and we could maybe just look at the past and see what margins have been at the best during the best economies, and say, okay, let's sort of replicate these margins. And then even in the companies, you could have a sort of a bottom-up approach in some way where you could say, all right, when we're dealing with salaries in companies, these jobs should pay this much money. And then we could structure every company to be successful, but not where it would go out of control.
Yeah.
And also you want to encourage, instead of just having one Facebook, you need to have several companies. Maybe they use the same platform.
Right.
Maybe everybody's using the same platform, but it's split up between these multiple companies, and that way it's more nuanced and it's not succumbing to power. But you do a bottom up approach with everything, and then when it's things like what you're talking about, like individual services or it can even be like a performer or something.
Right.
I think society.
I'm a masseuse.
I think society can dictate their value differently than a product, because with a product you have a company that's putting out like that guitar, and they're saying, well, we're going to price this guitar at this price.
So let's say that by law, that guitar can be manufactured for $300, and then you have the ability. Let's use $1,000 just because easy math here, and we're going to allow you a 20% margin. Whether or not that's good or not is irrelevant, but we're going to allow you a 20% margin. Mm-hmm. So when you sell it, you can sell it to me for $1,200. Rough math, not exactly right, but you can sell it to me for $1,200. But then by law, I can also raise it by 20%. I'm going to sell it to him for $1,440.
Yeah,
and then he's going to sell it to Jesse for approximately $1,800, and then Jesse's going to sell it to the next guy. So you see what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah.
The cost of that item still goes to the roof. So what ends up is we're not individuals; we're companies. You just happen to be the first one to get the resource. You're selling it to me, and now we've got a row of middlemen, each one of us taking our 20%. And by the time this $1,000 guitar gets to the end user, it's $5,000.
Well, another thing with a guitar like that is who designed the guitar. Guitars, a lot of their value is based on who designed it, not
I agree,
the
but
quality of the guitar. But I mean, that's an important thing to consider. So you could say,
and if you say something's not allowed to be sold,
I think number one, the raw material regulation is a big part of the equation.
I think so.
And then when you get above that, it does become a little ambiguous. Like some famous guitar designer maybe designed this guitar, so that adds some value to it, right?
Right.
How much value does that add? How much? So you have to add that into the equation too, based on the price, the profit, or the cost of the guitar, or so maybe you say that guitar's raw materials cost X, and then they're allowed to have we all agree that a 50% margin's fair for the evaluation of this thing. This
is
creation.
the hard part for me to swallow. Yeah.
But then you have a famous guitar designer that developed the design of the guitar.
Yeah.
And they have a higher than average salary or value because they're charging this company to develop this guitar. So that goes into the cost of the guitar. So you can add a margin to that too. So they can get a margin based on just what they've put into the guitar. Plus they have a margin based on what they've spent having this guy design the guitar. So it's still going to be a premium guitar at a premium price. So they're still going to do very well, but they can't gouge us with it.
Yeah. Have you seen the NFTs that have sold for millions of dollars?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Have you seen the digital land that's sold for millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
How about Pokemon cards in a box that have been sitting for 20 years that have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars?
It's exactly why money's not real.
This is what I'm getting at here. This is exactly what I'm getting at but how do you control free will and human nature? Right,
I don't think you have to control that. I think that's fine.
If you're going to regulate pricing, you got to at some point.
You do on the.
Let's say that this
on the manufacturing level.
Let's say this
and the
bottle
retail level
is very, very rare, and it's worth $100 million, but the government says I can't sell it. I can't sell it for more than $5.
Well, we are the government, so it's all of us collectively.
Yeah, but the rule is that
if it's a collectible item, like say
then you got to have exemptions for other things. But
yeah, if it's something you're selling personally, you can sell it for what you want. You can sell that for whatever people are willing to pay for it.
So then supply and demand still comes back into effect.
It doesn't. because it's only supply and
I'm
demand.
going to buy up all the stuff I can. I'm going to buy it all. I'm going to buy this widget, this thing right here. There's 100,000 these produced a year. I'm going to buy 100,000 of them.
Nobody's going to buy it from you because it's not
I'm
a
buying them
scarce
all.
item though.
No, I'm going to buy all of whatever, any item. Any items become scarce if I own it all. There's billions of diamonds. They're only scarce and expensive because the diamond mining
well,
companies
guess what?
hoard
Diamonds
them.
become a lot cheaper.
No, I agree. What I'm saying though is if I'm a business, I just buy up the entire supply. I buy all the diamonds and I slow drip feed it to you so I can inflate the price. That's what the De Beers.
Well, we could have systems in place to prevent that.
No, but you just said as an individual I can sell all.
Well,
my
I'm
stuff.
talking about as an individual, not as a company.
Yeah, but I'm going to do it as an individual. I don't need an LLC. I'm saying this is the issue.
You have to have
It's
an
like-
LLC to start selling it at that level.
Yeah, but I want to go. I'm not going to sell at a level. I'm going to buy them all. I'm going to sell one at a time. I might sell one a month.
Yeah, there's no way to regulate aftermarket or black market?
Well, here's a good example of this: is when I buy the
here's the
I
thing.
buy the Lamborghinis, they're instantly worth more than what I'm paying because there's not enough of them.
Yeah. Well, that's
These shoes I'm wearing right here, I got these for free, by the way. If
nice
anybody can
kicks,
see them,
by the way.
yeah, these Yeezys right here. Never had a pair. Never paid for a pair. Thank you, Parker.
How
I
you
appreciate
liking
it.
'em?
They're actually very comfortable.
Yeah, they are very.
Very comfortable. I got them for free. I have $0 in them. Supposedly he paid, I think, $750 for these, right?
About right.
So, but in theory, though, what if I bought all the Yeezys and I said, you know what, I'm only going to sell 3 a month, and they're $25,000 a piece?
before we go any further. This is a good example of what we need to be doing in society because this conversation is painful. It hurts your brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's good. That's what you want. When you
That's the working out. Right?
when you have a conversation, you're trying to solve a problem. It should be painful.
Yeah, it should be,
It shouldn't
yeah.
be comfortable.
It should be.
If it's just all comfort, you're not accomplishing anything.
I agree.
This conversation hurts your brain.
I agree.
And that's how it should.
No, there's
be.
so many. I guess, and see, I'm intentionally playing devil's advocate, but I'm thinking about as we all would, the moment you create a law, there are people that immediately are going to find a workaround.
Sure,
Right.
and I think you should. I think that's just like it's just like science. You should always be questioning things and trying to find new ways to do things.
Yep.
And then that gives us a new problem to solve as a society. So I think in this case, maybe corporations shouldn't be allowed to buy up all the resources. of
I think
one
we
thing.
should buy a planet. I'm being serious. We should buy a planet, and let's be forward thinking, and let's buy a planet because in our lifetime, very likely we can start to develop another planet.
I guess
we
Mars would be the most likely.
Yeah, let's buy a planet. Let's see, who do you buy it from? How do we stake our claim?
Well, nobody owns it.
I mean, this question's coming up in the metaverse pretty soon, right? Like, there's all this land that's for sale. You can
Yeah,
buy a meta planet.
That's true.
yeah. Who are you buying the land for in the metaverse?
I think whoever has the rockets and the technology to get there, who takes it, is the one who's inevitably going to try to dominate that domain.
Yeah,
And maybe we all collectively own everything to some level.
No. When you come to Mars, I own it all. Those rules may work on Earth. I agree. Real quick, Taylor Swift.
Yes.
This Taylor Swift thing has been bothering me. I got to say
We
this.
got
All right.
5 minutes on Taylor Swift.
I could be wrong, but we were talking about Taylor Swift. You know, she's redoing all her music. So
Yes.
I'm not gonna. I think his name is Scooter, but either way, Taylor had an option to buy all her own music. I think it was like $350 million to buy the rights to all of her music.
Right, yeah.
I think it was like $350 million. Don't quote me in the dollar amount. Anyway, she got the option, even though she claimed she didn't get the option. She's been recorded saying that she got the option and that she thought it was absurd that she would have to pay that much money to own her own music. Okay. Fast forward to this last year, she has said she never got the option to buy it, which I've seen it, right? I know she got the option to buy it. Someone else bought the rights to the music, somebody that she doesn't like, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a little bit of a fight going on, right?
Yeah.
Because she's not happy about it, and she doesn't feel like she should have to pay the royalties.
Right.
So she relaunched, and she has been re-recording her music, right? Same words, almost exactly
what
the
I've
same
seen
beat.
is she's re-releasing it, and it says
Taylor's version.
Taylor's version. Yeah.
So, and she's said on TV many times, this is so that when you listen to this one, the money actually comes to me. So she's doing this to directly divert funds from somebody else that already owns the rights to this music. So she's just re-recording it. And so what I'm saying is, what I was trying to say is, in that other podcast we were talking about it, is I'm curious to see how long this goes by, because you don't sue day one. I think you wait until a tremendous amount of money's been made, and then you sue.
Yeah.
So unless there's some behind the scenes agreement going on, I think she's about to be in the middle of a massive, massive, massive lawsuit, because she's literally, it'd be like you and I having a partnership to produce Fiji water, and we've made hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in revenue off Fiji water. And then even though I've got a contract with you, I say, you know what? It's not fair that I still have to keep paying you. I'm going to do Fiji by Daniel, and I'm going to go sell Fiji by Daniel over here, and I'm going to cut you out.
Yeah.
And, hey, guys, buy Fiji by Daniel. Don't buy this one, because this money goes to me.
But was she getting any money for her music?
Yeah. She as contract. Just as other artists do. They get it's on a point system.
Oh.
She just didn't own the rights to the music.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if your name was Fiji. It's different, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
We get into the artist rights.
Well, she also created the. I think. Yeah.
In Australia, they call it Uggs.
So I think there should be.
There's a thing on Uggs right now where Ugg is just the name of the. It is like, it'd be like me calling this a shoe.
Right.
But what Ugg did was they they got trademarks for the word Ugg, which is basically like a certain type of just a shoe. And then they went after everybody that tried to use the word shoe.
Oh yeah,
there's a whole UGG thing going on. It's a really interesting story in Australia. But
well, I think with that, I think that would be another thing we collectively would agree on as a society and vote on it.
Yeah.
How do artists artist rights? And I think that even goes into something.
It's hard for me to hear her whine about being worth a couple $100 million and bitching.
She's worth more than that, isn't she?
Yeah, $400 million. Was well.
Yeah.
This was in 2020, so who knows what she's worth now? But it was $480 million in 2020.
Apparently, it's been going on since 2017. Yeah. I'll look into it.
Well, one thing that
what's Taylor Swift's net worth right now?
Taylor Swift's net worth is $400 million.
Yeah.
She makes $150 million per year. That's what I see.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
It's went up. Yeah, she's probably over $500 million now. But either way, the
and
point though is it's hard for me to hear you whine about you not getting your fair share and you're worth $500 million.
And listen, I don't have a problem with people making that much money either.
I agree too.
And I think in an ideal society you can do as well as you want to, and I think that's what we want.
What Taylor needs to do is just have a few more relationships, write some new songs, right? Some hate me, love me, all
and
that,
negotiate better deals.
And
right?
negotiate better deals.
Well,
and there's levels to this. You can't be mad about the very first deal that you negotiated when you were,
Well, maybe you can regulate the negotiation of the deals too.
But would you say that that's a bad deal? A deal that ended up with her being one of the wealthiest people on the planet was a bad deal?
It's not a bad deal, but it was not maybe a balanced deal.
I don't know.
Because look at what the company that made the deal made. You know what I'm saying? Like
I don't know what they made.
Well,
they sold the entire rights for $350 million.
Well, that's true.
Less than her net worth.
Yeah. So maybe it wasn't that bad. But
I'm just saying,
regardless of that, though, there's another issue with copyright, where, and we ran into it with our show. Just having somebody do a cover on the show or play something that they created, and we get flagged for it. I think there should be some way to deal with just art in general, because I've always said that when an artist produces something or creates something, it's not just their ideas; it's the collective ideas of society. There's millions of ideas being channeled through that person, and they're just they have an exceptional gift of expressing those ideas, and that's why you hear like a young artist, maybe a singer or songwriter, and they sing a song or create a song, and the lyrics and the feeling and the emotion behind that music it transcends them. It's like this person's 24 years old, but they're saying things that resonate with all of us in a deeply profound way. There's no way a 24-year-old would have all this in them, personally in their personal experience. They're just articulating the ideas of all of us, and I call them like expressive or artistic volcanoes, I guess. And so as we grow as a society and a population, I mean, there's almost 8 billion of us on the planet. A lot of these ideas and expressions will start to overlap, and then it's just an endless sea of litigation. But because your song had some of my notes in it, or your song had some of my lyrics in it. But there needs to
start doing that in relationships. You had some of my ex-husband in there.
But we need to have restructure that where things can overlap. People can, I guess, uninhibitedly create art. And it's one thing if you're just copying somebody, but it's another thing if you're creating something that's overlapping or inadvertently overlaps other people's stuff. But if it does, then maybe a little piece of it goes to them. Like whatever the overlap is goes to the original artist, and you start to share in the pool of art. But anyway, I know we're running out of time.
Also, Taylor Swift, by the way, that's her liquid net worth. That's not her value. Because if you think about this, what would somebody be willing to pay Taylor Swift for the brand Taylor Swift that generates $100 million plus a year?
Over $1 billion.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what is she really worth?
So I'm reading an interesting article about it. We'll have to bring this up on the next one. But she signed a 6-album deal when she was 15 years old and gave the rights to the masters to this small company that she recorded with in Nashville. And then Scooter Braun, manager of Ithaca Holdings, bought Big Machine Records for $300 million. He correspondingly acquired the masters of Swiss 6 albums. She had no say on what they did with that and who got the rights to those things. And she sung and wrote and all this. It's interesting.
Yeah,
it'll be an ongoing thing, but that's a good.
Well,
point.
see, and the thing is that there's on video her saying that she had the right to buy it, but that she thought that the amount was ridiculous.
Then she made a mistake. It's like if you sold.
Well, but see, they're changing the. If you look, like you say, she says she has no say. Well, if she'd have bought the rights, if she'd have bought it, then it would have.
And I think I don't have a problem with that. I think she made a mistake. She made a bad business decision.
Does she have the right to re-record the things that she
I don't know.
sung?
It depends on the
wrote
contract
and played on. You know what I mean?
Depends on the
question.
contract.
The contract. My guess is the contract she signed when she was 15 years old.
Well, it's like if I wrote a screenplay and I sold it to a studio,
Right.
I can't get mad later because they made $1 billion on it. And I sold it for too
Well, then
cheap,
the question
right?
would be: is could you take word for word, scene for scene, note for note, the exact same screenplay, the exact same thing they did, and reproduce it?
No, 'cause it's
but at the
copyright,
bottom put Fast and Furious, Neil's version.
It's the same movie.
Yeah. Really, you didn't even re-record it. You just copied it and then put Neil's version at the bottom.
It's got Lynn Diesel in it.
All right, guys.
All right, man. Thanks. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. See you next week.
Later, guys. Bye.